Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
This is the interactive session. I'm trying to get you all warmed up for what will be, I think, a very, very fun interview. Often people jump right into something without a little bit of background. Girish is a head of a public company, a valuation of about $4 billion. So any comments that he makes today do not in any way refer to the current quarter or the next quarter in terms of activity. My parents would be so proud. That was 3 years of law school that I perhaps made constructive use of. But let's start off with getting people to know you a little bit. Just very briefly, a little bit about your background and your thought process about going to EE, electrical engineering, that MBA school, and coming to the US.
So, good morning, everyone. And before I start off, John, I should share a small tidbit of how I feel at this moment. Very early in my career, in 1999 to be exact, I worked for Cisco Offshore Development Center in Chennai, and as an entry-level programmer, and John was the chairman and CEO at that time. So it's an absolute honor to be sitting here with you today.
Pleasure, my friend. Thank you. And for those of you all taking notes about interview style, he did one of the most basic things you do to the moderator. You compliment the moderator at the very beginning. Hard for me to ask the tough questions, easier to make it a little bit softer. That was a good start.
Thank you. So I come from a tier 2 town in India called Trichy. So my early days, childhood, I would say I've always been an average or above average student in both in school and college, so nothing extraordinary to talk about there.
Now, he's being very nice. You've got to be in the 2% top of the school to get into these universities you went to. So I get it. No. Average among really, really good people.
I didn't go to any of those Ivy League colleges, just for your information. I actually say all my education happened after college.
Okay. Go ahead.
So I think in 2002, I was an accidental product manager. So I was given an opportunity, thrown an opportunity when I came up with an idea to my boss. He said, why don't you build the product? And I actually started Googling for the term product manager. I realized that I really loved that. And I think before Freshworks, the biggest accomplishment in my career is building global products from India and scaling them to like really successful millions of dollars of revenue. And that was truly what I think defined my early stage of my career. And the idea for Freshworks actually came from a personal life incident. This was in 2009 when I was living in Austin, Texas, and moving back to Chennai.
Yes.
So I was shipping all my household goods back home, and there was a terrible customer support experience that I had when the shipping company broke my TV. And I tried calling them, emailing them for 5.5 months. They wouldn't pay the insurance claim. So I took my story online in a forum, and the president of the company came and apologized, and the next day money was in my bank. This was early 2010, when the world was just waking up to using Twitter and Facebook for customer service. So as somebody who had built multiple customer service help desks, like I could sense an opportunity here to build a fresh help desk. That's why our product was called Fresh Desk, where we took the idea of taking an email help desk for email and phone calls, but also adding social channels. So we got 100 customers in 100 days and 200 customers in 200 days. We knew we were onto something.
It's a great start on it. It's hard to really do an elevator pitch on your company. Many of the companies here are coming here to meet the VCs in the room or the other potential investors, and you're now a public company. So when you get in front of either a customer or an investor, give me your best 2-minute elevator pitch on what Freshworks is really like and how you're different than the others in the field.
So I will try, John. I would admit that this is the hardest question that I dread everywhere, right? The elevator pitch, I want to find the guy who actually invented the elevator pitch. No matter how many times I practice, it keeps getting harder and harder. So, because we build so many products. Also.
And it's so important, though, because so many people, and it's amazing how often you get a startup, even here, and you ask them, and after they talk to you for 5 minutes, you go, you don't want to say it, but what do you do again? And what's the differentiation? And even more important is you're public, to be able to get it tight on it.
So, at Freshworks, we build modern customer engagement and employee engagement software.
Okay.
Now, over the years, I've learned from our customers on why they really like us or like how we are different. And it always boils down to three things. One, our software is designed for the frontline users, the salespeople. We solve for the pain of the frontline user.
Okay.
Second one, our software, if somebody buys our software, they can go live in weeks, days or weeks, not like 12 to 18 months to
One of the important lessons, not only a short sales cycle, but you bring them to output.
Instant gratification.
Very quickly. Yep.
And the third one is like the total cost of ownership offers incredible value to our customers. So this is consistently been the message that I've heard from customers. And I think when I started Freshworks, one of the things, the decision that I made was to build a different kind of enterprise software. And I think it comes from, like we wrote about this in our S1.
Yes.
We said the original cloud promise has been broken. Now, I think all of us here know 20 years ago, the problem with on-prem software used to be that, hey, enterprise software is expensive, clunky, it takes a year to implement, and then SaaS was supposed to solve for all of that.
That's right.
So you fire up your browser and everything should just work, is what they said. But 20 years later, where are we today? Enterprise SaaS still costs millions of dollars, requires an army of consultants and 12 to 18 months to go live, and is still clunky. So that is how we are different. Our fresh approach to software is to solve for the user pain and make it instant gratification, easy to set up, easy to go. And we say that we build for the Fortune 5 million, not the Fortune 500.
Gotcha. So real scalability.
Yeah, and today Freshworks is north of $400 million of annualized revenue, and we have 58,000 customers globally, and I think our vision, our differentiation is working.
17 different locations on a global basis. You did something that often startups make the mistake of not doing. Most startups start in the commercial market and then over time come up to the enterprise. Others start in the enterprise market, and then when that slows down, they go to commercial. You did both of them in parallel.
So we started with an inbound model. Like today, the fancy term for this is product-led growth. I didn't know that in 2010 or 11.
Yes.
So because we started in Chennai, one decision was to always go international from day one.
Yes.
Because I know selling to Indian customers can be tough. I think you probably know
I agree.
some of that. So my decision was to go international. So when we had a handful of customers, they came from 4 different continents.
Yep.
And in the online model, when people come to your website, the majority of those customers used to be like SMB, small and medium businesses, like companies with 50 employees, 100 employees. So that formed the crux of our initial customer base. But we also saw that there was a pattern that was changing. Users within larger companies, teams, were actually coming online and they were buying our software. So as early as 2013, we saw companies like Burger King, Schneider Electric, 3M, Sony Pictures. So these were companies who were coming online. Some team, it's not like an enterprise sale. It's one team coming online and buying like 50 seats, 20 seats, or a few hundred seats. And we were not used to that. Our typical deals would be like 3 seats, 4 seats. But so we saw that our product is working well, and then we decided to go after the larger companies.
You know, I'm going to switch directions, then we'll come back to Freshworks and your experience and lessons learned. In looking at your background, you started in India, you came to Silicon Valley, you went back to India, you came to Austin, you went from Austin back to India, then you came to Seattle. People talk about where is the best place to do a startup today. You've been in 4 of the hottest centers in the world. Do you have a preference for one? And carefully said, but being very candid, who do you think's got their act together the best in terms of if you were doing a startup today, where would you start?
So I think I would split US and India into like 2 parts, right? So first, if you're asking me, what did I like, which city did I like better, and where would I start? Like, so if you say Bay Area, San Francisco, or Seattle, or Austin, I think after living in all these 3 places, I've come to realize that I like the people in Seattle, the weather in California, and the home prices in Austin. At least...
You can tell he's the head of a public company, can't you? That was really good.
Yeah.
Really good.
So, but where I would start a company, I think I'm biased.
Yeah.
So I would go back to Chennai and start there all over again because it's incredible, like even with all the lack of talent that we had in 10 years ago. I think it's still buzzing. The energy level is different. And you said, like, every time in my life, I have tasted success in Chennai. So when I finished my education, I came there. I had my first entrepreneurship there. My first job was there. So I think it's always, all of us can relate to it. Like, for me, I wrote a blog post which says, the city that loves you back. So for me, it looks like every time there is something happening in my career, I go back to Chennai and I'm onwards and upwards. So.
And today, what percentage of your employees are in Seattle and what percentage are in India? Neglect the rest of the world. What's your split?
Yeah, I think 80% of our employees are in India across 3 centers, Chennai, Hyderabad, and Bangalore.
Yeah.
Seattle is a smaller office. We acquired a startup and we have hiring there is 35 people total. Globally, we are 5,000 people.
Gotcha. So what you begin to see is what so many of the startups are doing, which is they really have 2 major locations or headquarters, one in India and one in the US, in whichever city they pick in terms of direction. And that gives you tremendous efficiency and flexibility. Now, switching directions back the other way, you've been head of a private company multiple times, and you now are head of a public company. Is your strategy different? Is your vision different? What are some of the lessons learned on those 2?
So over the last 12 years, I would say our core vision has continued to remain the same. Our products have evolved.
Yes.
So, and I'll start by saying, like I told you that we started Freshworks as Freshdesk with a focus on empowering the frontline user, right? So the customer support agent. Now, I have been doing this for the last, I think, 18 years, building customer support systems since 2004. So our job is to help the customer support agent in that part of the business. How do we enable them to really delight their customers, right? So in 2010 and 11, businesses were struggling with social media. Like, how do they add on social media when they were waiting for customer calls on phone and email? Customers were complaining about them on social media. So we solved for that. And over the years, we saw that there were new channels coming up. Like there were mobile apps. People wanted support on the mobile app. People wanted cloud telephony. People wanted to automate some of the support on bots because the IVR offered automation, but the bots didn't. Mm-hmm. So we followed our customers. So our core philosophy has always been focus on your customer and see what problems you can solve for them. Mm-hmm. And we have evolved there. And from that, so the vision is still the same. How do we empower that frontline customer service agent who's powering the business to delight their customer? But today we are talking about conversational support on WhatsApp in India or text messaging, or even we recently announced a unified CRM for e-commerce companies with a Shopify integration where support can be entirely on WhatsApp or text messaging. So for us, the problems can change, the product can change, but the vision remains on how do we enable businesses to delight their customers.
Gotcha. Communicating with Wall Street, you're only as good, G, as your most recent quarter. And we all in this room know that if you focus on the business quarter by quarter, you're probably going to fail. How do you strike that balance? And because it is different, and when you have people like Jamie and Sumant and March backing you, they look at the long term. They still give you a hard time about a quarter, but they're really thinking where you're going to be 1-3 years out. Wall Street, majority of your shareholders won't be in your stock 12 months from now. They'll rotate through. How do you strike that delicate balance?
So first of all, let me start by saying I don't fundamentally agree to the statement that you are only good as, I don't internalize that. You're only as good as your last quarter. So
yeah, that was my teaser question. I agree. But you'll feel it as the head of a public company. You get a quarter and it's almost like you get a report card.
I'm still, it's 2 quarters in and I'm still learning and learning from the best. We have some great board members who have, and management team members who have run public companies. But I'll tell you, the lessons to solve the challenges for today, I think are the same ones that I've learned in my life. At any point of time, it's not like, I've been running Freshworks for 12 years. So it's not that we never had any challenges in these 12 years. Every year, there was a different challenge. So there were years with growth problems, years with churn problems, years with people problems, years with like scaling culture problems. So my life lessons have been like, in this context, 2 important life lessons. One, who do you want to please? You can't please everyone. Mm-hmm. So in this case, I choose to focus on my employees and investors who believe in us for the long term. So those are the ones we could really please. Second thing is focus on what is controllable. What can we do? So I can't change the markets, but I can go back, and it's always been, okay, go and focus on improving the products. What problems can we solve for customers? How can we make them happier? How do we set up a culture of performance for our employees and enable them, set them up for success? So this has always been what we have done in the past, and I think if I look at, okay, our market cap was where it was, and it is today at 4 billion, but what can I do? The controllable factor is I can keep executing, and we can go and focus on empowering our people to make them be successful. I think that's what, that's my life lesson, but I would also like to learn from people like you who have seen this movie before, and if you want to share something on this.
So what he's doing very nicely is turning the moderator back to get a question while he thinks about what we're going to cover next. And I love this, man. It's fun to work with. And the way that I do that, G, is I go back and say, what did I like in your prior answer a lot? Two key takeaways for me. The first is that well-run companies don't make decisions by quarter. And they do the same thing they did if they were doing it well as a startup. They think where they want to be 1 and 3 years out. That's your North Star. You articulate at the market, you articulate your employees, and you go. You still have to be responsive to the quarter, to the legitimate concerns about Wall Street. Is there a trend going on that you're not aware of? But I think the minute I had my competitors thinking the quarter, then I'd accelerate, and I had them. So I think the first answer was excellent. And then when you make decisions, whether it's how you manage through a potential financial downturn or at least a stock dropping a little bit. And by the way, most of your peers got hit worse than you did. I know that doesn't make you feel any better or your shareholders feel any better. But back to the point you made earlier in the discussion, focus on what you can control and try to not worry about those things you don't control. You still will, but it won't. What's the one lesson going through the scenario we just talked about that you wish you'd learned earlier, that you could both share with the audience, but a lesson that you wish that you had earlier that would be most valuable for the people in the room?
I think the lesson that has served me well is something that I got it right the first time because I didn't have a choice. So, and this is about betting on people's aspirations, especially on people who haven't been there, done that, but who have the hunger and drive to succeed. So the context is when we started Freshworks in 2010 in Chennai,
yes,
like we didn't have access to a lot of been there, done that talent. Like I'll share a story. We decided that we are going to use Ruby on Rails as our programming language.
Yes.
And I'll tell you, till employee number 69, none of the engineers that we hired actually knew Ruby on Rails when they came into Freshworks, because the talent simply didn't exist. So rather than trying to hire Ruby on Rails engineers or move to a different location, we decided to hire smart people and bet on their ability to learn. And I'm just using Ruby on Rails as an example.
Yes.
You know, in the Valley, you can hire today, or even in 2010, you could hire 9 different disciplines of SaaS marketing, like
yes,
advocate marketing, PR, events, field marketing, digital marketing. So in Chennai, I would be lucky if I could get somebody who's done software marketing. So what do you do when you're operating in constraints like that, right? With constraints like that. So we decided that look for the aptitude, look for the core talent. Like, and in India, I always say the unfortunate truth is everybody finishes engineering and then figures out what they want to do in life. So we went and hired computer science engineers who would actually put up their hands and say, I want to work in marketing, I want to work in sales. So we focused on their core talent, like can salespeople be engaged, like people who can like engage in a good conversation, we hired them for sales. People who could think on their feet and had good audience empathy, we hired for pre-sales. People with good empathy and teaching skills and patience, we hired for customer support. So we bet on, like, and this comes from a book that I really changed my life and approach to managing people. The book is called First Break All the Rules by Marcus Bingham.
Yes.
So it actually differentiates about skills, talent, and knowledge. So there's a nice quote in the book which says, you can't put in what God intentionally left out. So rather than going by academics or experience, we went by the core, understanding the core of what makes a person tick, and then help them play to their strength and unlock that. And that is the one lesson I would say really is the reason for Freshworks being where it is today.
Where do you see Freshworks 5 years from now and 10 years from now? What's your aspirational dream?
So we want to be the most iconic product company to have ever come out of India. And we have a real shot. We are operating in 3 really large markets today. So we have guided this year that we'll be close to $500 million of revenue. And we can keep this going for a long, long time and create massive change in the lives of employees and the ecosystem that we are playing in. So my dream is India as a product nation. And I think Freshworks, we call it as the Roger Bannister moment for India SaaS. And so we have the opportunity to show the world and show India what can possibly be done. So we are super proud of the fact that we started in India. So I think we want to build the most iconic product company.
You know, there's a very good friend of mine who passed away 2 years ago, Shimon Perez, and we talked about it yesterday. He's a huge believer there's no room in the world for small dreams. And when you dream small dreams or incremental improvement, it's hard to break away, and I'd argue it's hard to survive long term. I love your vision of a very, very aggressive vision of what could happen to be the most iconic out of India in this category group. Mistakes made or lessons, do-overs, if you will, how do you handle your setbacks? And anything you can share with the group in terms of lessons learned when you do get knocked down, which all of us are going to do. And if you don't get knocked down and make mistakes, you're not pushing hard enough. So lessons learned? And I don't want you talking about a specific transaction because that relates to your public company, but just kind of lessons learned in general.
No, but see, my life has always been full of setbacks, right? Right from my early childhood to starting in Chennai, even as simple things that we take for granted today, we are co-working spaces, so we have struggled for office space, we have struggled for infrastructure, but I can keep going on, but I think in the interest of time, John, I think your experience in dealing with setbacks, specifically in an environment like today, which is top of mind for everybody, on a macro recession downturn. So I would actually want to learn from you on how did you solve the 2001 dot-com crash and the setback that Cisco went through at that time.
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit yesterday, but I think the key points are when you get into a problem, you just feel terrible, and it is really lonely. And it doesn't do any good. You want to be very realistic, what was inflicted by the market, what was self-inflicted. You want to realize that it will be lonely guiding through, and this is where you've got to lead. You've got to be the lead dog in the dog sled. If you run too fast, the team breaks down. You run too slow, you don't achieve your goals. One of my key lessons learned is don't do the right thing too long. I'd run the company for 40 quarters, and boy, I could predict every quarter because of my numbers and never missed them, even though 80% of the business was new. But I needed to add other variables in there, like what was occurring in the market in other parts of the world. And because I didn't get that, I went from the most valuable company in the world to a company all of a sudden, after being the CEO of everything imaginable, Kramer saying, John, I'm not so sure you should be the CEO of Cisco. And so that was a lesson learned, don't do the right thing too long. But the second thing is when you do decide to move and you have to move quickly and paint the vision of what you're going to look like when you come out. I'd say those would be my two key takeaways.
Awesome, thank you.
Last minute and a half or so of the session, you've been to a number of these before you went public, you've gone to them recently after you go on public. If you were sitting in the audience today and wanting to learn from you, and I mean literally from you, what question would you ask or ask me to ask of the audience? So put yourself back in 1 or 2 or 3 years and put yourself in the position of the audience. What would you want to know from you?
No, I was actually surprised that you didn't ask this question because everybody asked me this about...
Well, if everybody asked you, then it wouldn't have been a good question for me.
So
I distracted him there, we're having fun.
Yeah.
But I like this, go ahead, please.
Yeah. No, the question that is getting asked a lot today is about the durability of India SaaS. And so like people have asked, is Freshworks like an outlier or an exception, or are there more companies coming? And what's the real differentiation, or how is it going to change? I think it's a very nuanced answer in terms of, so the short answer is, it is a very, very durable opportunity, and that's why I keep saying we are like the Roger Bannister who got lucky to be the first one, but there are so many more coming. And
being the first is the hardest. It really is.
Yeah, it has been hard, but I think the reality is the macros that are driving the opportunity for India SaaS are things that didn't exist 15 years ago. Digital transformation of every business, no matter big or small. The accessibility for the SMB. So 15 years ago, there is a reason why every company used to sell to the large enterprises, because the SMBs were not accessible. So today, the customers, big or small, they're all looking to digitally transform themselves. They are today serviceable, accessible, and there is a playbook that's being built as we speak in terms of how do you sell profitably to the long tail of the global SMB and mid-market with product-led growth. And also the other macro is users not accepting software that's being pushed top-down, but actually going online and buying what they want. So I think these things, and the availability of capital and AWS, all of these, or Google Cloud, so all of these together is creating a massive opportunity where every category of software is up for disruption. I'm not even talking about the India market. I'm talking about global SaaS from India. I think it's a very durable opportunity, even with the downturn or the macro that we are seeing now. I mean, we're not yet seeing it. The caution of the recession, but the markets are already behaving as if we are in a recession. But I think even then, I think I'm a believer that the India SaaS opportunity is very, very durable.
I think it's a great takeaway. G, I very much enjoyed the time together today. I believe in your vision and your company, and it's been a great honor to be your moderator. Please join me in thanking G.
Thank you.